I walked ahead to grab the truck while my wife took a call from the hospital. 20 seconds later, an old parking attendant stopped me cold. "Is that your wife?" he asked. Then he showed me his phone. 30 seconds of footage. 25 years of marriage. Gone. It was Saturday, September 7th. Diane and I had spent the afternoon at Northgate Mall picking out a watch for our son Evan's 21st birthday. On the way back to the truck, her phone rang. Seattle Grace Hospital, an emergency. She sent me ahead to grab the vehicle while she coordinated a transfer with someone named Dr. Vaughn. The name meant nothing to me then. I was 30 feet from our truck when the attendant approached. Late 50s, gray-streaked hair, a face that looked like it hated what it was about to do. "My name's Vincent," he said. "I work here most days. 2 weeks ago I saw something. I've been debating whether to tell you." Then he turned his phone toward me. Grainy security footage. August 24th, 3:47 p.m. This same garage. Diane, with a man in surgical scrubs, his hand on her hip, familiar, comfortable. Then the kiss. Not quick, not uncertain, practiced. The kind that comes from repetition. "Who is he?" I asked, throat like broken glass. "I don't know his name, but he's been here 4 times this month. Always in those scrubs, always with her. He'd started keeping records, timestamps, photos. If it were my wife," he said, "I'd want to know." 12 years as a military intelligence analyst had taught me one thing: don't react. Gather intelligence, confirm everything, then strike with precision. So when Diane walked up minutes later, laughing about crisis averted, I smiled, took her bags, and drove home a different man than the one who'd walked into that garage. That night I lay awake while she slept peacefully beside me, phone tucked under her pillow instead of the nightstand, a habit I'd never questioned until now. At 2:04 a.m. it buzzed. She smiled in her sleep. Not at me, at whoever was on the other end. By morning, I had a plan. I found Brady Merrick, a former Seattle PD detective turned private investigator, and hired him on the spot. "My wife is having an affair. I need everything. His identity, financial movement, communications. Something that holds up." He gave me a week. The report came 3 days later. Dr. Preston Vaughn, cardiac surgeon, Seattle Grace Hospital. Monday, the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, room 847. 2 hours and 32 minutes, while I was reviewing blueprints and texting her about dinner. Tuesday, the same parking garage, and buried in the financials, irregular transfers moving out of our joint accounts. I sat with that report, and then walked out and kissed Diane on the head. "Sorry, work email." We watched television together, like nothing had happened. I was becoming someone I didn't fully recognize. A man who could smile beside his wife while cataloging her betrayal, like evidence in a case file. But confrontation now would only give her time to run, to hide money, to lawyer up. Patience wasn't weakness. It was strategy. I went back to find Vincent. We sat in a dive bar 3 blocks from the garage, and what he told me next broke something else entirely. "I hired a PI," I said. "He confirmed everything. But why did you tell me? You don't know me." Vincent was quiet a long time. Then he pulled a photograph from his jacket. Faded, creased. A young woman holding a baby, a man beside her in a suit, his hand not quite touching the child. "His name was Thomas Thornton," Vincent said. 58 years ago he had an affair with my mother while on business. He left before I was born. Never came back. My father's eyes stared back at me from that photo. When I finally found him and showed up at his office, he told me I was a mistake, threatened to destroy me and my mother if I ever told you. He handed me a DNA report. Half-sibling probability, 99.97%. He'd confirmed it 3 years ago, using a coffee cup I'd left at a job site. He'd taken a job at that parking garage just to watch me, and ended up watching Diane instead. "There's something else," Vincent said. "Brady found it in his early digging. It's not just an affair. They're moving money, real amounts." My stomach went cold. This wasn't betrayal anymore, it was fraud. Vincent brought me to his apartment days later, a wall floor to ceiling with surveillance photos, bank statements, a red string timeline stretching back 8 months, all the way to Valentine's Day, the first confirmed hotel visit. Pinned near the center, paperwork for an LLC called Summit Healthcare Partners, co-signed by Diane and Preston. $180,000, drained from our savings in careful increments. He's done this before, Vincent said. Portland, 2019. San Francisco, 2021. Denver, 2022. Same model every time. Hospital administrators. Married, mid-40s, access to money. He seduces them, sets up a clean-looking company, drains it, and disappears before anyone connects the dots. One of those women, Dr. Audrey Kingsley, was flying in the next day. She was also his ex-wife. I called my sister Bryn, a divorce attorney with 25 years of scar tissue and a corner office overlooking Elliott Bay. I told her everything. Vincent, the fraud, the DNA, all of it. She listened without interrupting, her expression sliding from shock to something colder and sharper. When I finished, she said one word, bastards. Then she opened her laptop. We had grounds for fault-based divorce on adultery and financial misconduct, and if the LLC crossed state lines electronically, potential federal wire fraud. She laid out the plan: freeze the accounts Monday, file for divorce, build a case Diane couldn't spin her way out of. And there was one more thing I hadn't known. My father, after his own affair, had inserted a protection clause into our mortgage. If the marriage dissolved over proven adultery, the house stayed entirely mine. Saturday I met Audrey Kingsley in a Ballard coffee shop, polished, professional, and hollowed out in a way sleep couldn't fix. 7 years ago she'd been a hospital CFO in a dying marriage when Preston arrived. Charming, attentive, endlessly understanding. 6 months into the affair, he'd pitched her a business. She'd invested $400,000 of her mother's inheritance. When the inflated pricing surfaced, Preston's lawyers made it look like her scheme. She lost her job, her marriage, her reputation, and signed an NDA to avoid prosecution. He moved to San Francisco and did it again, then Denver, now Seattle. She slid a folder across the table. 4 women, 4 cities, the same script every time. If we can get multiple victims to testify together, she said, we build a federal case instead of a local one. Maybe we actually stop him. I told her what I wanted, to catch him admitting it on record, and to force Diane into a choice. Help take him down, or go down as his accomplice. Audrey agreed to break her NDA. I just want him facing real justice, she said. For once. The hospital gala came next. Diane wore red silk and excitement for weeks. I wore a rented tuxedo and a wire taped flat against my chest. Washington is a one-party consent state. Every word that night would be admissible. I let Diane introduce me to Preston at the bar, watched him size me up and dismiss me in seconds. Then I mentioned Summit Healthcare Partners. His color drained. I recited the details. Room 847, the timestamps, the transfers, quietly enough for only them to hear, loud enough that I raised my voice at the end for the room. Very nice meeting you, Dr. Vaughn. I walked away and didn't look back. In the car afterward, I pulled onto the shoulder of I-5 in the rain and laid it all out. The surveillance, the financials, the LLC with her signature on it. She broke instantly. 8 months, she admitted, since Valentine's Day. I showed her Audrey's folder, the other women, the identical script, messages copy-pasted word for word between victims. You're the only one who understands me, Preston had told every one of them. Diane's fantasy of being chosen collapsed in real time. Then I asked about Evan. I'm type O, she's type B. He's type A, genetically impossible if I'm his father. Her silence answered the question I already knew. Get out, I told her when we reached the driveway. I filed for separation. Accounts freeze Monday. She stumbled inside in the rain, and I sat in the driveway feeling 25 years turn to ash. The DNA results confirmed it 2 days later. 0% probability of paternity. I sat in Bryn's office, staring at the number, thinking about 20 years of birthdays and baseball games and bedtime I love yous. Bryn wouldn't let me spiral. That test tells you about biology, she said. It doesn't tell you about fatherhood. Love does. Time does. Presence does. We agreed. Evan wouldn't hear the truth until after graduation, when he was stable enough to carry it. A non-disclosure clause would keep Diane from weaponizing it in anger. Asset division was clinical and total. The house, mine, thanks to my father's clause. Most of the retirement accounts, mine. The business, entirely mine. No alimony. Diane walked away with almost nothing but her own 401k. Then came the voicemail. A pocket dial from Diane, panicked, calling Preston. I listened to the whole thing. "There is no we anymore," he told her, cold as ice. "You've become a liability," she begged. He hung up on her mid-sentence. It was the confirmation I needed, and it was the moment Diane realized, in real time, that she'd burned her entire life for a man who never loved her at all. We gave her 2 weeks to sit with that isolation, before Bryn and I showed up at her hotel room with the truth. Federal wire fraud carried 5 to 10 years. Cooperate, wear a wire, testify, and walk away with immunity and her freedom. Or go down with him. She agreed to help. At the FBI field office, Agent Owen Ramsey laid out Preston's decade of victims. 5 women, 5 cities, over $2 million stolen. The exact same phrases recycled between every one of them. Diane called Preston from a monitored line, voice cracking with real fear. He agreed to meet her that afternoon. I watched the recording through a one-way mirror. Preston arrived irritated, controlling, dismissive, right up until Diane pushed. "You weren't the first," he finally told her, "and you won't be the last." "I've been doing this for 10 years, he admitted the pattern, the targets, the strategy, all of it, on tape, calling her and every other victim easy. Then he threatened her into silence and walked out. Agent Ramsey took off his headset. "We got him." The next morning, FBI agents walked Preston out of Seattle Grace Hospital in handcuffs, still in his surgical scrubs, past nurses and colleagues, and dropped coffee cups, straight through the front doors and into the cameras waiting outside. I stood by my truck with a coffee raised in a mock salute. He saw me. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The trial ran 2 weeks in February. Diane testified under immunity. Audrey took the stand and named exactly what he was. A predator who used people until they were empty, then discarded them. Amanda, Valerie, Hannah. An FBI accountant walked the jury through $2 million stolen across a decade. The jury took 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 18 years federal, license revoked, assets seized. The divorce mediation had already closed weeks earlier. Diane didn't contest a single term. "You're right about everything," she told me, voice hollow. "I destroyed 25 years for a con artist who never cared about me." She apologized. I acknowledged it and moved on. The paternity clause was signed and sealed. Evan would learn the truth on my timeline, not hers. Not in anger, not until he was ready. Thanksgiving that year was the strangest table I'd ever sat at. Me, Evan, Diane silent and diminished. Vincent trading engineering talk with the son he'd helped protect. Bryn, and Audrey, who by then I'd started quietly seeing. Evan asked about his new uncle. I gave him the short version. Later, on the back porch in the rain, he asked what I still wasn't telling him. "There are things," I admitted, "but none of them change what I am to you. When you're ready, I'll tell you everything. Trust me on this." He did. Months later, Vincent and I stood at our father's grave. "Thanks for being a terrible father," Vincent said, setting down flowers. "It brought us together. We walked away side by side, 2 brothers who'd found each other because of the one man who'd failed us both." By spring, my business was thriving, built on a reputation for handling betrayal with restraint instead of rage. Diane was in Redmond, working a fraction of her old salary, in therapy twice a week, slowly living with what she'd built and lost. Evan was weeks from graduating with his engineering degree, still calling me Dad every week, still not knowing, not yet, that biology had never made that true, because presence always had. I used to think revenge meant burning everything down. I learned something different in that parking garage, in that hotel room, in that courtroom. Real revenge is restraint. It's protecting what matters more than you protect your own wounded pride. It's choosing your son's stability over the satisfaction of telling him everything the moment you learn it yourself. Family isn't blood. Vincent was a stranger 6 months ago. Now he's the brother I lean on. Evan isn't mine by DNA. He's mine by 20 years of showing up. Diane and Preston chose themselves. I chose what came after. Not bitterness, but building. I'm 56 years old, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm finally free.